the affront that resonated with Sundar. The evening was serene in Washington, D.C., but inside the chamber, the air felt dense. Esteemed leaders, titans of business, and perceptive journalists had convened for a compelling forum on the future of technology and immigration. Cameras clicked, flashes illuminated the space, and hushed conversations filled the corners. Everyone was eagerly anticipating Sundar Pichai, the CEO who had become an emblem of aspiration for millions of immigrants across the globe. But before Sundar could articulate his thoughts, the stage was claimed by a man whose declarations had consistently carried both gravitas and contention. Donald Trump stood tall at the podium, his voice sharp and his expressions resolute. He surveyed the hall and began with a tone that was both self-assured and dismissive. "Immigrants," he pronounced, pausing to let the word resonate, "particularly those from India, are seizing positions that rightfully belong to Americans. They arrive here, they appropriate, and they contribute nothing in return. We have no need for them. We have no need for their so-called proficiency." The chamber fell into a profound silence. People exchanged astonished glances. A few journalists swiftly jotted down notes, their hands trembling slightly. Television crews zoomed in on Trump's countenance, capturing the firm set of his jaw, and then deliberately, all eyes shifted towards Sundar. He remained seated quietly in the front row, his hands composed, his face placid. But within his chest, his heart quickened its pace. He could feel the sting of those pronouncements, not merely for himself, but for every immigrant who had traversed oceans with a glimmer of hope, for every student who had persevered late into the night, for every parent who had sacrificed everything to provide their child with a more promising future. In that precise moment, recollections from Sundar's own voyage began to flood his mind. He recalled his modest residence in Chennai, where he had grown up with limited resources. His father, an electrical engineer, had meticulously saved money to acquire a telephone for their family. Sundar still remembered the day it was installed. It had felt like pure enchantment to him. He had lifted the receiver, listened to the dial tone, and marveled at how such a small device could connect individuals across the world. That instant of wonder had charted his course. Years later, upon his arrival in the United States, he had not carried wealth or influence, but a profound dream. He had entered classrooms with an accent, in borrowed attire, and with self-doubt lingering in his thoughts. But he had also brought with him an unwavering resilience. He had toiled diligently, studied late into the night, and never forgotten his origins. Now, seated in the hall, he felt the weight of all those years pushing against Trump's assertions. He recognized that he could not remain silent. The moderator turned to Sundar almost apprehensively and inquired, "Mr. Pichai, would you care to respond?" A hush enveloped the audience. Cameras repositioned themselves to focus on him. Millions watching on television leaned closer to their screens. Sundar rose slowly, his posture composed, his face serene. He adjusted his spectacles, directed his gaze toward Trump for a fleeting moment, and then redirected it to the audience. He began to speak gently, yet with a voice that carried. "When I first came to America," Sundar articulated, "I possessed very little. I carried 2 suitcases and more aspirations than I could count. I came to study, to acquire knowledge, and to flourish. This nation welcomed me with opportunities, and I toiled assiduously to honor them. Today, I lead a corporation that employs thousands of Americans, and together, we construct technologies that benefit billions of people worldwide." His words resonated with a quiet potency. The silence in the hall intensified. Trump leaned back slightly, his expression inscrutable. Sundar continued, "Immigrants do not come here to take away. They come here to give. They bring their proficiencies, their sacrifices, and their unwavering resolve. Every immigrant has a narrative of hardship, but also a narrative of contribution. My story is merely one among millions." He paused, allowing the words to sink in. He thought of his parents, still residing in India, and of the countless young students who admired him. He desired for them to feel acknowledged in that moment. Respect, Sundar stated softly, is not bestowed by the magnitude of one's power. It is earned through humility, compassion, and perseverance. I stand here not as someone who took away, but as someone who has striven to give back, both to America and to the world. The audience began to stir. Some nodded in agreement, some wiped away tears. Sundar's tranquil voice had touched something more profound than politics. It had reminded them of human chronicles, of voyages brimming with sacrifice and hope. Then came the unforeseen turn. A journalist rose, daring enough to pose a pointed question. "Mr. Pichai," she said, "are you implying that immigrants have done more for America than Americans themselves?" The hall held its collective breath. It was a snare, a question designed to incite discord. Trump's eyes sparkled, as if anticipating Sundar to falter, but Sundar did not waver. He looked directly at the journalist and responded with grace. "This is not a contest of who has done more. This is a collaboration. America is great because it embraces people from every corner of the earth. When immigrants prosper, America prospers. When America thrives, the world thrives." The room erupted in applause. It was not boisterous at first, but it swelled in wave after wave until the hall was filled with clapping, cheers, and even tears. Trump shifted uncomfortably, his lips pressed together. Sundar, meanwhile, slightly lowered his head, not in arrogance but in humility. He had not attacked. He had not retaliated with an insult. He had simply articulated the truth of his existence, and through that, the truth of millions. The cameras documented every instant. Within minutes, the video clip would disseminate across the globe. People would watch Sundar's response not as a political declaration, but as a human narrative. And in that hall, as the applause resonated, Sundar comprehended something potent. This was not solely about him. This was about providing a voice to those who were frequently unheard. He returned to his seat quietly, his heart still beating rapidly, but his spirit steady. He had confronted an affront with dignity. He had transmuted pain into fortitude, and he had reminded the world that respect and kindness could still triumph over anger. But deep down, he knew this was merely the beginning. The tempest was not over. The days ahead would challenge him more than ever before. The tempest expands. The night following the forum, the world could not cease discussing the event. Sundar's tranquil yet powerful words had already gone viral. Television networks replayed the clip repeatedly. Headlines permeated newspapers and websites. Sundar Pichai responds with humility, stuns audience. Immigrants CEO stands tall after Trump's harsh words. A reply that touched millions. But while some commended him, others distorted the narrative. In certain circles, Trump's adherents labeled Sundar as weak, ungrateful, and even perilous. Hashtags saturated social media, some in support of Sundar, others deriding him. The tempest had commenced. In his hotel room, Sundar sat by the window, gazing out at the darkened streets of Washington. The city lights flickered, but within him, the gravity of the moment weighed heavily. He had not intended to respond in that manner. It had emanated from his heart, from his memories, from his truth. Yet now he bore the responsibility of millions of voices. His phone vibrated with notifications. Colleagues, acquaintances, and even complete strangers from across the world had written to him. One message came from a young student in India. "Sir, when Trump insulted us, I felt shattered. But your reply gave me courage. Now I believe I can pursue my dream without shame." Another message arrived from a father in America. "My daughter is the first in our family to attend college. She is apprehensive about how people perceive her as an immigrant. Today your words gave her strength." Sundar read each message meticulously, his eyes becoming moist. He realized it was no longer just a speech. It had become a beacon of hope for many who felt unseen. But hope often brings challenges. The next morning, news channels invited commentators to engage in discourse. Some praised Sundar's dignity, calling him a genuine leader, but others accused him of being political, of crossing boundaries he should have steered clear of. One anchor stated vociferously on live television, he should stick to managing a corporation, not lecturing America. The camera had zoomed in on her severe expression, and her words had cut deeply. Sundar felt the sting, but he also recognized that something within him had transformed. This was no longer exclusively about him. This was about demonstrating that kindness could endure even in the midst of fire. Later that day, Sundar received an unexpected phone call. It was from the White House. The voice on the other end was formal. "Mr. Pichai, the President's office is cognizant of the repercussions of your words. There is pressure, there is commotion. We request that you refrain from making further public statements." Sundar listened in silence. He comprehended what they desired, silence. But silence had never altered the world. As he ended the call, he thought of his father once more. Years ago, when Sundar had left India to study in America, his father had advised him, "Always remember, strength lies not in how loudly you speak, but in how true you remain." Those words echoed now. That evening, Sundar attended a private dinner with business magnates. The room was filled with immaculate tables, golden lights, and glasses of wine. But beneath the polite smiles, there was a palpable tension. A distinguished CEO leaned in close to Sundar and spoke in a hushed tone. "You have stirred a hornet's nest. People are now scrutinizing your every move. Be cautious." Sundar offered a polite nod, but his mind was already in motion. Then, something unexpected transpired. During the dinner, a young waitress inadvertently stumbled and dropped a tray of beverages near the table. Glasses shattered and liquid pooled across the floor. Some guests scowled, others murmured under their breath, but Sundar immediately rose, helped the waitress gather the scattered pieces, and offered her a reassuring smile. "It's perfectly all right," he said softly. "These things happen. Do not be concerned." The waitress's eyes widened with surprise. She whispered, "Thank you, sir." The moment seemed trivial, almost insignificant compared to the commotion outside. But for Sundar, it served as a powerful reminder of what truly mattered: kindness amidst adversity. Unbeknownst to him, a guest quietly recorded the interaction. Within a few hours, the video was online. Sundar Pichai comforts waitress during dinner, genuine humility. The clip spread like wildfire, solidifying Sundar's image as someone who championed respect and humanity, not just through his words, but through his actions. Yet, the more his public image grew, the more the pressure intensified. Political factions began to scrutinize him. Business leaders engaged in hushed conversations in meetings, and journalists established a presence outside his office. Sundar was aware that the days ahead would be more difficult. He could already sense the impending backlash. And then the plot thickened. Late that night, as he returned to his room, a message appeared on his phone. It was from an unidentified number. The words were brief, chilling, and laden with a dire warning. "Your words hold sway, but influence comes at a cost. Be prepared." Sundar froze, his gaze fixed on the screen. The world outside was celebrating him, but in the shadows, unseen forces were mobilizing. The applause had given way to a foreboding silence. The silence was on the verge of escalating into a full-blown conflict. Shadows lurked behind the applause. The morning sun ascended over Washington, but Sundar felt no warmth. The cryptic message from the previous night lingered in his thoughts like a persistent shadow. "Your words hold sway, but influence comes at a cost. Be prepared." He had encountered challenges before: business competition, personal hardships, and doubts from others. But this was different. This was not a debate, not a disagreement. This was a direct threat. He sat by the hotel room window, slowly sipping his tea, his mind burdened with worry. The city outside buzzed with people, cars, and noise. But in his heart, he felt an unsettling stillness, as if something unseen was observing his every move. His assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, your schedule for today includes interviews and a panel discussion. The media is clamoring for more comments." Sundar nodded but remained silent. He thought of his parents in India, his wife and children in California. He wondered if they were safe. Still, He reminded himself that fear was a luxury he could not afford. Millions were now looking up to him.